And if you guys weren't aware, Duel Masters was a card game that came out in 2002 by Wizards of the Coast and then another company I can't remember the name of. In 2004, they came out with a Duel Masters game for the Game Boy Advance called Duel Masters Sempai Legends. It's the first Game Boy Advance game and first Duel Masters game in general. I stumbled upon Duel Masters again for the first time in 20 years. I played it a lot as a child, and then as I got older, I got more into Yu-Gi-Oh! And ended up actually being a competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! Player for the majority of my life, so I'm pretty familiar with card games. So I decided to go ahead and give Duel Masters a try. At the same time, I had already been considering making a YouTube channel for Let's Plays of video games. So I decided to go ahead with Duel Masters Sempai Legends as my first Let's Play, as a way to get back into that franchise after having been gone for so long. You may not be familiar with this, but the Game Boy Advance actually had quite a few different card battling games on it. I have played basically every Yu-Gi-Oh! Game there is, and I played the Pokemon card game on the Game Boy Color. I played the Digimon card game on the PlayStation, so I'm pretty familiar with this format. The overall style of the game is top-down, similar to Pokemon. Immediately looking at it, you can tell it is definitely not Pokemon. The card pool for the game consisted of the first two sets of Duel Masters, the base set, and the Evo Crushionators of Doom. I think I said that right. There are 5 different civilizations, kind of similar to Magic: light, darkness, fire, water, and nature, which is similar to the 5-mana color system in Magic the Gathering. The world consists of a few different villages and cities, as well as one ship in the south of the map. The overall map does look similar to Kanto, in my opinion. The actual gameplay of the game, though, felt smooth. In Duel Masters, when your shield breaks, you get a card into your hand. So if you're losing, you get a little bit of a boost. So overall, the gameplay felt fine. Very simple, because it is only the first 2 sets of the game, so there isn't anything crazy going on. Mostly simple attackers, blockers, simple effects. But overall, very good to get into if you haven't played any card game before, or if you haven't played Duel Masters in a very long time and you want to get back into the game. It's a very good refresher. You're going to see a lot of very familiar cards if you're like me and watched the show as a kid. A lot of the cards in this game are going to be exactly the ones you saw on the show, like Bullshock Dragon was one I think that the main character used a lot, and I instantly recognized the name as when I read it. A lot of the card art I also instantly recognized as soon as I saw it. The graphics overall of the game in the overworld were not too bad. The only thing that I thought was pretty bad were the character sprites. They definitely looked dated, but even at the time, I feel like they were not very good for the GBA era. If you look at the other games of the time, their sprites looked a lot better for the characters. The overworld sprites and the sprites for the cards, however, were both acceptable. I think the card sprites were actually good, and the overworld sprites were fine. They were okay. In the cities and towns and stuff, the houses looked fine. The battle dome looked fine. It was most of the character sprites that feel very dated. It has a story, which is more than a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games at the time, which were just dueling a face. The basic structure of the game starts off with you on your birthday. You get a card from your grandfather as a special birthday present. Then at night, some guy breaks into your house and steals the card while taking an incriminating photo of himself, which will be used as evidence later. The plot overall is pretty simple. Once you had your card stolen, go find a detective that is living in Greenwood. When you find him, he tells you you have to pay, but as a child, you cannot pay. He makes an agreement with you. If you are able to win the local Greenwood tournament, he will take on the case for free. So we went to go duel in the Greenwood tournament. There, we won after a few different tries. I got 2 losses in the Greenwood tournament. The first time I entered, I lost the first match. The second time I entered, I lost the second match, giving me my first 2 losses of the game and 2 of my only 4 losses of the entire game during the entire series. There were 3 different towns. The first one was Greenwood, the second one was Briar Hills, and then Clearwater. You had to win the tournaments in each of those towns in order to be allowed into the cities. The cities had larger tournaments, 1 extra round for the first 2 cities, and the capital city had 3 extra rounds, so a total of 5 at the end of the game, where you would, at the end of the capital city tournament in Lakeburg, have to fight the guy who stole your card in the beginning of the game, who looked like Red X from Teen Titans, except he has gained a lot of weight. small subplot that happened in the middle of the game where a fortune teller, gets your deck and then mixes it all up with all the cards in your trunk. So then you have to fix your deck, and then you have to also battle them at the next tournament that you enter. Afterwards, they end up stealing the prize from the tournament. You have to track them down and defeat them. That was basically the only non-tournament thing to do in the entire game. So I feel like the game was lacking in that area in particular. There wasn't a lot going on from village to village and city to city outside of just, hey, go duel, win the tournaments, and then get some more cards and go on from there. There could have been more if like each individual town and city had its own little, just one event in each little town and city to kind of make it feel unique. I feel like that would have made the game slightly better. At the end of the game, when I went into the final tournament, the Lakeburg City tournament, to get my card back at the end, it was relatively easy. I almost lost on the 4th round where I was playing against an aggressive red deck, which I felt like if the red or the Fire Civilization decks were too aggressive to begin with, I could run into some problems if I couldn't get blockers down fast enough. I did almost lose, but I was able to win very close. It was very close at the end there. And then against the final opponent, the main boss of the game, it was so easy, I felt very disappointed. I was very actually upset with the game at the end because it was not hard at all. My opponent did not even cast the creatures that I knew they had in their hand because I had returned them to their hand, and they did not make them into mana, and they had mana to cast them. So the AI overall is pretty terrible, in my opinion. After that, I was told to go to the Flying Tapioca, which was a ship that I had found in the beginning of my journey. I noticed it to the south of the town where I lived. So we made our way to the Flying Tapioca after we get our card back, and the Mr. M. Colote was arrested, rightfully so, for stealing our card. We go to the Flying Tapioca, where we're told some of the best duelists around who'd won big championships were going to be there, so we should go there to challenge ourselves further. At this point, you were not required to have any duelist level to do anything, even though we had stopped at level 25, and it caps at level 100, meaning they thought people were going to really play the game that much. I disagree. And we begin dueling these sailors, only to find out they all basically have exactly the same deck, and there is basically no reason to duel them. I dueled all 9 and got nothing for it, and then immediately teleported outside the ship, and that was it. So that felt very unsatisfying after coming off of the main boss fight of the game, feeling unsatisfied. So 2 unsatisfactions at the end of the game in a row did not have me in a great place. So after that, I was told that some men in black, not the people who protect aliens, but just some goth kids, I guess, were in the tournament or taking over my hometown. So I go there to do that. I enter the tournament to duel them, and they are both very easy duels. And then I just get the medal from my hometown, and I have all the medals, and I'm all done. Now, I could go and get all the cards in the game, but the game was not that fun great at giving me options to get more cards. I had to randomly get lucky at the card shop or lucky in packs. In either way, that is random, and that is not a very fun gameplay experience when you're looking for specific cards. If I was going into this game with a certain deck in mind, and I was just unable to get the cards from the packs and not seeing them from the trade shop, I would be very disappointed. I came in with an open mind, not caring what I played, just kind of figuring out what I got and going from there, and it turned out fine for me. However, if you wanted to come in and you wanted to play a very specific deck, you may be finding yourself not able to get certain cards at all or until the end of the game in the post-game, which is not very cool either. Having some of the cards of the game only available in the post-game and then making the post-game very underwhelming was not very enjoyable. So, requiring a certain level for your duelist level in order to enter the tournaments also felt like a lazy way to make people play the game more. I don't think you would have been able to just run through the tournaments with your starter deck and win if that was what they were afraid of, by making it so you have to duel so many times in order to raise your level up. They wanted you to keep playing and get your gameplay hours to a certain point. If you ran into problems where you couldn't defeat the tournament that you're up against, let's say you had no duelist levels, right? And you're going into the first city tournament where if there are duelist levels, your duelist level would be like, let's say, 10, and you had to be duelist level 15 to get into the tournament. When I got to the city at the first time at level 10, my deck didn't really change much to when I got to level 15. And same for like level 15 to level 20, I just got more copies of the same cards I was already playing. So my deck was already powerful enough to win. I was just being forced to duel opponents to an arbitrary level and experience cap in order to be ready to duel in the next tournament. So I feel like removing the duelist levels, adding more small story elements into each little town or village or city would have made the experience overall better. By the end of the game, I had basically 4 copies of each card in my deck that I played on the regular. One thing I did like about this game is that after you beat one of the tournaments, you got a second deck slot unlocked. The detective gives you a second deck slot, meaning you can experiment with a second deck at this point. I tried that, however, I had found because I could not buy specific cards at the card shop, I was unable to get a second deck that was powerful enough without completely deviating from getting cards from my first deck, which was not very fun for me. Overall, I had fun with the game. I enjoyed Duel Masters as a child. I played a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I've played all the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games a million times. So much so that, like, they're not fun anymore. They're a little fun, but I have to give it a while before I play them again. Given that, this game was a huge breath of fresh air to me as an individual, because I played all these Yu-Gi-Oh! Games so much, and I just wanted something that kind of felt like that, but was just different than what I had been playing before. Duel Masters was perfect, honestly, for what I was looking for. I wanted to play a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. It gave me a card game to play that gave me a story. Well, was it the best story? No. Was it a good story? Also probably no. But it was at least something. And that's more to say than some of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games that they're honestly competing with. So the sprites for the character models and the overworld and some of the other stuff was not great. If you can get past that, though, the actual gameplay of the actual Duel Masters card game is actually enjoyable. Having 2 different sets gave me enough cards, 180 cards total in the game. With that, there were enough cards to have some deck variety. I found myself choosing only certain of the water civilization creatures to use in my deck, and only certain of the light civilization creatures to use in my deck, because of a certain class, like Guardian or Aqua People, which is what I chose to use in my run. I could then go back into the game and then take out all those guys I played with, still play light, still play water, and just play like a different class, like Berserker, I think was one for the light civilization. And then there's like Cyber Virus, I believe, for the water civilization. Those actually seem like very good cards, and I think that would be the one I would play if I played it again. And I wanted to use the water civilization, I think I would go into those card archetypes and those synergies. Replayability, I think it probably has some, if you're willing to accept you're going to have to grind to get those duelist levels up. At the end of the day, I would say if you've played a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, specifically on the Game Boy Advance or maybe the Nintendo DS, and you've played Magic the Gathering or maybe Pokemon, and you just want something kind of similar to that, this is definitely the game to try out. And if you like it, there's a PlayStation 2 game called Duel Masters. There is the next Game Boy Advance game called Duel Masters Kaijudo Showdown, and then Duel Masters Power of the Code. Those 2 other Game Boy Advance games take what was made in this game and builds upon that, so it is very nice as a stepping stone to get you into these other games. Personally, I enjoyed the game. It has a very high amount of flaws, but given the time it came out in and what they're working with, the card sprites look really good. The gameplay for the actual duels I felt was smooth. The interface for checking the cards in hand and checking the cards on field, once you figured out all the buttons, were very good and gave me all the information I needed to make the correct plays in my duels. If you guys want to watch the game, I have the entire Let's Play on my channel. I'll have a video card pop up right there. It's going to take you to the playlist that's going to have all of the videos from the game. And if you liked it, or you like me as a person, go ahead and give me a subscribe. I'm going to be playing the other Duel Masters games on this channel eventually. I don't know how fast I'm going to get to those.